everybody, and welcome back to the Chilluminati podcast, episode 148. As always, I am one of your hosts, Mike Martin, joined by the Holmes and Watson of LA, Ooh. Alex and Jesse Cox. I think that's a bit more appropriate. Before I can let you say anything, I have to continue. And also, special guest host today, Sinvicta of twitch.tv/Sinvicta, youtube.com/Sinvicta, and twitter.com/Sinvicta. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up? I'm glad to be here with so many extensive titles. Thank you, Mathis. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I got to lavish them upon my friend, as you are truly the honored guest of this episode.
It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to today's episode.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. But before that, hey, Holmes and Watson. Doesn't that fit like a little better?
It's good. I'm not going to get into the discussion of which one of us is Holmes and which one of us is Watson.
I would like to.
Well, I would like to. Well, wait, because I have a joke that I want to say first. Ready?
Yes.
Holmes and Watson, more like Dietz and Watson.
Is that a reference to something I haven't seen?
Jesse, your response?
Cricket. Somebody's going to lose their mind. Don't worry about it. That's for you guys at home. Don't worry about these guys. These guys,
everybody's just staring at the camera.
These guys are too healthy. They're healthy eaters.
Anyway,
it's food. Okay.
Anyway, with hot takes like that, you're clearly the Holmes.
I'm the Holmes.
Yeah, you're the Holmes.
At least I'm popular. At least I'm well liked.
You can have that. I'll let you have that. People can go tour your fake home in the UK.
It helps me forget about my problems.
You had Robert Downey Jr. portray you a couple times, so that's good.
True. That's true.
Yeah. Congratulations.
I'm gonna make that again.
I'm fine being Dr. Watson. You know what? I'm all right. I'm all right with being a medical doctor who just like deals with you. Yeah, I'm all right with that.
Dr. Watson, more like Dietz and Watson.
Oh,
cricket.
Yeah,
cricket.
Guys, patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod is a wonderful website that is out there on the internet. You can go there. You can support us. This show will come on more and more times forever, maybe, possibly, until the money dries up and we lose our homes. And that's it. If you go there, not only do you support us, you get stuff in return, like back in the day when you get a tote. It's like the digital tote bag of 2022, if you think about it that way, like back when there were TV drives and you got tote bags, but now it's 2022. So instead you get art, you get access to stuff before anyone else. You get all kinds of like an extensive library of us reading crazy news articles for the week and sometimes other things, which I tease on a regular basis here on the podcast. Patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod, 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 the finest website.
I'm so glad that tagline has stuck. It's really done a great job at pushing people to Patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod.
It's good. I mean, I don't know. It's the last word in slogans.
It's the only quote unquote ad I leave in for the Patreon people because people love it that much. So I leave it on. I don't edit it out. It gets put out there for patrons as well, so they never forget.
That's the secret to doing ad reads, folks. Just do a great job.
Just do a great job.
So Sinvicta, we when we're on this show with a guest, we always start by asking them like, what's your like relationship with the subject matter of the show? Like, are you a believer? Are you like a skeptic? Are there certain things that you're like big in on that like, are big, or certain things that you're out on? Where are you at?
Well, again, thanks for having me here. First off, I'm super excited to be doing this episode. And as far as the question at hand, I'm definitely more of a skeptic than anything. I've been around the circles here and there over the years, people who like believe in like all the witchcraft and then believe in ghosts and all that stuff. And I'm like, all right, if you challenge me to go sit down in some place that you think is haunted, I will stay there for 24 hours and not have a problem. That's the type of person.
You're just like Jesse. Then you're a Jesse.
Yeah, I was gonna say you must be listening to the show because that is like word for word what Jesse said.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay,
literally.
Yeah.
He said that many times.
Let's make it happen.
I'm down. Let's freaking do it.
So on the Jesse to Mathis scale, you're a Jesse. Not even anywhere else. You just firmly on the left.
I mean,
side.
I'm not wouldn't say that I don't entertain the belief of some things, but at the end of the day, I'm just like, if you said, all right, I'm going to give you $100 to give you my honest input. Do you believe in ghosts or telekinetic powers, that sort of thing? I'm going to say, no. Can I have my $100? Thank you.
But do you at least invoke the Mulder clause? Like, do you want to believe?
I want to believe, yes. I will go that far to say that I would love to believe in something like that. It's just that my mind will not allow me to entertain such thoughts when there's not a whole lot to really go on.
The burden of any rational-minded man. You know?
I guess if that's my title, I go here from without, and then I'm willing to own it.
Vaya con Dios.
Today, Jesse, you have a brother to lean on.
You know what? I always knew that. Like, the minute you said Sinvicta was going to be on, I was like, great. Easy for me.
Yeah,
I don't have to argue anything.
I'll just microdose some shrooms and just like go full Mathis.
Yeah, I need somebody to balance the scales, please. Nobody left in the middle.
Jesse and I have the same beard color as well, so we are really just brothers.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
I'll watch one episode of Land of the Lost, Batman Forever, the movie, and then I'll be in Mathis World.
Land of the Lost is great.
Amazing.
Land of the Lost is amazing.
Well, the reason actually for having Sinvicta here as well is a topic that people have really wanted us to cover for basically since the inception of this podcast. It's a very popular topic, and I'm surprised we haven't covered it yet. And Sinvicta is a native of the region. We will be covering today the Bermuda Triangle. Finally. Before we dive into anything, just to list a few of the sources I used. Researching the Bermuda Triangle is kind of like researching aliens, I realized. It's just scattershot information, many of which contradict each other. I have two separate potential origin dates for the name Bermuda Triangle to start. But thank you to history.com. Obviously, that's like, it was a huge resource for me. The book, The Bermuda Triangle, Mystery Solved, the 1975 book by Lawrence David Cush. So if you want to read it, he's kind of a guy who really breaks it down scientifically. And we'll just say he's not a believer in anything of the mystical that happens there. And a bunch of other freaking websites that I ended up using to kind of piece this thing together. I imagine the three of you are at least very familiar. You have to be very familiar with the Bermuda Triangle, right? Like there's no way either all three of you just don't know what this is.
Very familiar, like case for case, no, but
okay, not case for case, but the idea and what the mysticism is and the like.
Yeah, like it's like some X-File shit. It's like the Twilight Zone. It's like Langoliers. I don't know, like something's happening, things are disappearing. Yeah. There's like a weird 1960s electronic organ sound that you just hear in the general vicinity of the.
It's true.
That's how you know you're in the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah. That's when that noise travels through the airwaves.
Yeah, they don't have signs out there to say, "Hey, you're here now." It's you got to listen for the pipe organs and the angels chorus and all that stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
looking for like an interdimensional door opening in the sky.
Yeah, the TLDR on it is basically the layman's understanding of it would just be that planes go missing there. There's paranormal stuff that can happen. Space-time thing kind of warps, and there's just all kinds of crazy stuff. And I think the one that's most commonly associated with it is the fact that you have these planes that just go missing. These ships, they go into the triangle, then they disappear because there's like a big wall of mist or whatever, and they never come back. I think that's probably the most accepted, widely understood concept of the mysticism surrounding the whole area. But as Mathis, I'm sure we'll go into, it goes way deeper than that for some of these stories.
Yeah. So a big thing too is we've actually on this podcast did briefly touch on the Bermuda Triangle a couple of times in some side episodes. The Hollow Earth one, for instance, when that guy got brought into that slit in the middle of like the water and brought into like the paradise that lives beneath the earth.
Yeah, a couple other things have led us to the Bermuda Triangle tangentially.
Yeah. So in this episode, instead of retreading old ground, the plan I have really is simple. First, I want to look at where the origin of the Bermuda Triangle even starts. When was the first encounter, or at least the first mention of the thing? After that, I've picked like 5 or 6 of the major disappearances that we'll just go over and talk about. And at the very end, I really want to talk about, that's basically where the book I read came in, what likely happened and what the reality of the actual situation is. And are really that many things going missing there? Or is it more pop culture rumors that are spread? We'll talk about that a little bit.
Can I ask you one question about the book that you read?
Yeah.
Self-published or real published?
and it's published by multiple different people. It's been republished by multiple different people over the many years. You can get different editions of it, different covers. It's
Can
all
I ask
kinds
you
of.
what this book is?
It's a man who's basically he's an investigative journalist. He went out looking for the people that have claimed things happened, claimed things went disappeared. He interviewed eyewitnesses. He would research records to match up ships. Did they really go missing? Did they not go missing? And basically just tried to either prove or disprove what he could in the investigation of the Bermuda Triangle.
That seems dope, actually.
Do you know?
It's very good. It's fun.
Do you know when this book was published?
1975.
Can I tell you something?
Please.
I think this is the book I had when I was a kid. And my dad gave it to me. My dad gave it to me, and it was one of my favorite books. One of my absolute favorites.
Birth of the
think this
Dead.
might
He's
be
like
it.
the man in the book. I don't know. He's very like. He seems sick of the rumors. Like, I don't know. He's like done with it. He really wants to prove it false or prove that something happened, but it's good. It's a good read. I suggest you go read it. It's fun. It's not that big of a read either. And you can get it pretty cheap on Amazon and just choose which edition you want.
That's exciting.
So before we dive into Sinvicta, you are from Bermuda, correct?
That is correct. Born and raised there. I know a lot of stuff when it comes to the island.
Thanks to Bombas for sponsoring this episode. Ooh, Bombas. The word sounds so good coming out of my mouth. Bombas. Well, what is Bombas? Bombas' mission is simple. Make the most comfortable clothes ever and match every item sold with an equal item donated. So when you buy Bombas, you are also giving to someone in need. Bombas designed their socks, shirts, and underwear to be the clothes you can't wait to put on every day. Everything they make is soft, seamless, tagless, and has a luxury, cozy feel. And I would know because they sent me some clothes, and it is so nice. I'm wearing one of their shirts literally right now. They're made from super soft materials like merino wool, pima cotton, and even cashmere, which makes them the perfect cozy layers. There's a pair of Bombas socks for everything you do. They come in tons of options like comfy performance styles for every sport and activity that keeps you moving. Bombas t-shirts are made with thoughtful design features like invisible seams, soft fabrics, and the perfect weight so they hang just right. Bombas underwear has a barely there feel with second skin support that might make you feel like you forgot they were there in a good way. And did you know that the socks, underwear, and t-shirts are all three of the most requested clothing items at homeless shelters? That's why Bombas donates one for every item you buy. Go to bombas.com/chill and get 20% off of your first purchase. That's bombas.com/chill for 20% off. bombas.com/chill. So what is the story or the rumor or the myth of Bermuda Triangle in Bermuda, if there even is one?
So as a kid growing up, we didn't really hear or know anything about it. Like we wouldn't be like, oh, hey, we're all living in the Bermuda Triangle. Like it wasn't really like that. I didn't even hear about what the Bermuda Triangle was until I came over to America. And people would always constantly ask me like, do you live in Bermuda? Whoa, how do you live in the triangle? So I'm like, what are they even talking about? Because even back then, like on TV, we didn't get American TV. It was all British stuff. So whenever we would hear the term Bermuda on TV or even on the radio, it was a big deal. Like that Beach Boys song was huge. We were like, oh, Bermuda, let's go. But there's no prevailing like undertone of like, oh, we're living in a mysterious place or anything like that. It was literally just home.
No Area 51 vibes. No,
nothing like that. No.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Well, I find that really interesting and probably indicative of what the truth is behind the Bermuda Triangle as a whole. Yeah, we'll talk about it as we go. But to start, even there's conflicted information as to where the name Bermuda Triangle even started, or at least the story behind the Bermuda Triangle even started. We have an article written on September 17th of 1950 in the Miami Herald that talks about the unusual disappearances in the area, though it does not use the term Bermuda Triangle directly. The name Bermuda Triangle is first used in February of 1964 by an author, Vincent Gaddis, who wrote an article called "The Deadly Bermuda Triangle: for a pulp magazine called Argosy.
That
or
is
Argosy.
significantly newer than I would have imagined it would be.
Yes, I thought the same thing as I was looking this up. I'm like, this is not that old.
I would expect it to have been 30 or so years older than that at least. Is that weird?
You would think it'd be associated around like World War II or World War I.
Something like that. Yeah.
So that's interesting because, I too feel the same way that most of the stories you hear about, like the World War II pilots that went there, or like an ancient, like a frigate got lost. But
wasn't there one that you did that was that is exactly what happened to it?
I think what's interesting here is that probably people they backtraced it. They probably were like, oh, well, what else happened in this weird place? And then they associated things that happened with the Bermuda Triangle rather than the Bermuda Triangle actually doing anything, which is super interesting.
Correct. And that's exactly what I think happened as well. Because again, 1964 is the first time we even hear the word or the term Bermuda Triangle. But you're right. There are stories of World War II planes disappearing. There are stories of old-timey 1800s ships disappearing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Including modern stuff, which we'll talk about that. But yeah, what's also interesting and that we'll learn through as we go is how much pop culture has so built this myth that it is impossible to know what's truth and what's made up to make the story more fun unless you really rip apart digging for this shit, because it's not easy. So many people feel like they have Bermuda Triangle stories or they heard about this, but most of those are not true, or they have half the truth, but not the actual conclusion to the story. They just thought that's where it ended.
Yeah. The only one that we even heard about on the island itself was Flight 19. I don't know if you have any information on that.
We'll be talking a little bit about Flight 19 today.
That is the only one that's prevailed back in those days. And I had actually heard about that one only after I visited America one time, came back, and actually there's articles about it in Bermuda itself. But that's the most, to me, that's the most well-known one that I can remember from way back in the day. But even then that predates the term Bermuda Triangle.
Which is crazy, but because the next bit of information too points to, again, the thing that Jesse said, that they definitely seem to backtrack.
Yeah.
Because even in the article, the Gaddis actually is the one who dictated where the Bermuda Triangle even was.
Well, isn't that the vibe of it anyway? Isn't that the whole backstory of it? Is that it's like, we realized that all these things were in a triangle.
Right. So for people who don't know, it's Miami, San Juan, and Puerto Rico and Bermuda, those three places. What's funny is that even after this article had been published and it became more common in people's minds, writers who would write about the Bermuda Triangle following wouldn't even necessarily always follow the definition of where he declared the vertices were. Mm-hmm. Some writers gave different boundaries and different vertices to the triangle entirely, with the total area varying somewhere between 1,300,000 kilometers or 3,900,000. It's a huge, so for us, 500,000 to 1.5 million square miles.
So is there even an agreed upon one today?
No,
there isn't. People use it
only the boundaries that Mathis was talking about. The Puerto Rico, Miami, and Bermuda that's basically it. But as far as the loose definition of a triangle, it varies.
That is so weird.
There are some articles out there and some people who have made claims that it says it stretches as far as the Irish coast.
Mm-hmm. What?
Which is nuts. So again,
so far from there.
Again, because of that shrinking and growing size of the Bermuda Triangle, any and all stories in the general vicinity of that area can be tossed into the Bermuda Triangle story and the Bermuda Triangle myth, and immediately the myth is propped up even further and made stronger in the minds of people in pop culture.
But I think that also diminishes, one of the crazy things about it is that I very much remember an old Coast to Coast episode where a dude was like, the aliens, the facility that they have is actually much larger. And the reason why it extends actually further than the Bermuda Triangle is that one area just happens to be the center of their operation, but actually it's a much wider. And so that's how they can say Irish coast and stuff like that. But all that does is diminish the legend of the Bermuda Triangle, which it's better when it's a little tiny place that don't go in there.
Yeah,
I don't want to go in the triangle. It makes it worse if it's just the entire Atlantic.
Yeah, I was going to say it's literally just the entire Atlantic Ocean at that point.
But that's the thing, right? Is people want to put their stamp on it. And I imagine that just allows them to, it's very easy to try and get your name out there and be like, I have a story about the Bermuda Triangle. If the Bermuda Triangle can be any size you want. Yeah.
Like, imagine being like, I was also at the American Revolution. I was there. Like, here's something that I know about. Here's something I found out about that has to do with the American Revolution, this thing in history. Like, it's such a weird thing to not want to agree on facts. Like,
yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah, even I love the romance of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's too cool. That's like obviously why it's stuck around, right? But like,
right,
the idea that like, you know, I don't know. I come at these types of stories already from sort of just like a cultural perspective, where I'm just sort of like, oh, this is a neat thing, but like, isn't that I don't know, like the fact that they're not saying, okay, here's the like numbers for the triangle, like here's the ones that fall within it, there are this many. Like, it's weird that that's not what this is about.
Right. Yeah. It's so the more I read about it, the Bermuda Triangle just became more interesting, and not in a way that for me is like more interesting in terms of paranormal. It became a very interesting pop culture kind of topic as I kept kind of ripping through this stuff.
Super comic booky, right?
Very comic booky, like a lot of the time. In fact, like even further to the origins, there are actually scholars out there who believe that the first mention of the Bermuda Triangle is actually in William Shakespeare's The Tempest, and that's actually based on a real life Bermuda shipwreck.
That's where
that
it takes
happened.
place. The Tempest.
Yes, yeah, that's some scholars believe.
You are for believing such a thing.
It's either from a newspaper in 1964 or Shakespeare's first folio from the 1500s.
Right, but again, that's such a huge.
But this goes back to when we talked about Atlantis. And the idea that Atlantis could be anywhere, because everyone's like, well, I'm going to put my mark on this. So now it's in this other place. And I think I would say all four of us understand this, but Alex, I think you understand this most of all. The idea of when you go into writing and you in a room with other writers and like there's a product, or you have to like write a thing that exists. Everyone wants to have a little bit of that script so that so they'll just throw out, especially executives, they'll throw out like, what if instead it was a dog that talked?
The poison mindset of all creative work that involves money, period.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like this is roughly the same, where people are like, well, I want to get in on this. So now my story is it's like when it's like clickbait for paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
If you add Bermuda Triangle to it, suddenly your crazy theory makes sense.
Yeah.
Like to that point, when we did fucking Atlantis, I had like Atlantis is one of our most listened to episodes, and it's the conversations that spewed were crazy. People were mad at us, but they were all mad at us for different reasons because they all had different contradicting beliefs, but they were all, it's just nuts, and people just they want to latch onto it. It's insane. Continuing to build its mythology kind of over the years, more reports would slowly but surely build up of unexplained disappearances that wouldn't really catch the public's attention until the 20th century. One of the more infamous things that happened was a tragedy that occurred in March of 1918 when the USS Cyclops, a 542-foot long Navy cargo ship with over 300 men and 10,000 tons of manganese ore on board, sank somewhere between Barbados and the Chesapeake Bay.
That was the one that you were talking about, right, Jesse?
Yes, that's the one I was talking about. Yeah.
The Cyclops one is one you were talking about.
That was like a history
episode about that. And there was like there's a lot of weird stuff in that story, and a lot of reports of them being like, our engine is freaking damaged. And they're like, just go, you're fine. So there's so many levels to that story, but it is a missing ship, and it is super interesting. And it did disappear possibly in the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah.
Yeah. The ship put out to sea from Rio de Janeiro on February 16th, 1918, and entered Salvador on February 20th. 2 days later, she departed for Baltimore, Maryland, with no stop scheduled, carrying all the manganese ore that they had just picked up. The ship was thought to be overloaded when she left Brazil, as her maximum capacity was 8,000 tons, and they were carrying 2,000 tons more than the ship was made to carry.
That seems like that just solves the mystery right there.
That's, you would think, right?
Yeah, Occam's razor points to human error on that one.
Right, exactly. Before leaving the port, Commander Worley had submitted a report that the starboard engine had a cracked cylinder and was not operative.
Yep.
The report was then confirmed by a survey board, which recommended that the ship be returned to the United States. she made an unscheduled stop in Barbados because the water level was over the Plimsoll line, which I mean is the thing that indicates it's just too far up. You can see it just like a measurement. And I imagine the ship starts to sink once that is.
The Plimsoll line was literally anything, and I would believe you. It just sounds
that's just
like
a neat word, the Plimsoll line.
Yeah, it's the name of a special marking, also known as the International Load Line, the Plimsoll Line and Water Line, that indicates the draft of the ship and the legal limit to which the ship may be loaded.
Plimsoll Line.
It was overloaded. Yeah, it was overloaded with the manganese ore. It was just too heavy. But investigations in Rio proved the ship had been loaded and secured properly, so there was conflicting reports. The Cyclops then set out for Baltimore on March 4th and was rumored to have been sighted on March 9th by the molasses tanker Amulco near Virginia. But this was then denied by Amulco's captain. Additionally, because the Cyclops was not due in Baltimore until March 13th, the ship was highly unlikely to have been near Virginia on March 9th, as that location would have placed her only about a day away from Baltimore. In any event, the Cyclops never arrived in Baltimore and no wreckage of the ship was ever found, which is why it's so pervasive and so heavily mystery. Like, it's a big mystery.
Well, wait, so they said that they saw it and then they decided that it wasn't the Cyclops that they saw, or they saw it, they thought they saw it, and then they decided they saw nothing.
There were rumors that they had been seen, and then the captain of the ship the rumors were about then denied that they ever saw them. And it makes sense that it wouldn't have been out there, because if they had seen them, they would have been really close to Virginia, and they wouldn't have lost the ship.
But he was saying, we've seen nothing, not...
Yeah, he saw, we didn't see anything. We never saw them.
Got it.
And then again, no wreckage of the ship ever was found. Reports that indicate that on March 10th, the day after the Cyclops was rumored to have been sighted by the Amulco, a violent storm swept through the Virginia Capes area. While some suggest that the combination of the overloaded condition, engine trouble that they had, and bad weather may have conspired to sink the Cyclops, and I argue that any one of those things alone could have sank the Cyclops. An extensive naval investigation concluded, quote, "Many theories have been advanced, but none that satisfactorily accounts for her disappearance."
You know what's crazy? When I did this in a history mystery, I don't think the angle that I took on this was the Bermuda Triangle. No. And yet, this is in the Bermuda Triangle episode, which, again, goes back to the fact that the Bermuda Triangle is anything and everything, apparently.
Anything that happened in a huge portion of the globe.
Yeah, and and everybody loves a good missing ship story, and you know the fact that it can just disappear out of nowhere. It's like, oh, I don't know, wait, how does something that big get destroyed without anyone knowing? It's like, I feel like the people who hear this kind of thing and believe into that sort of stuff don't actually. They probably have never been over the Atlantic Ocean or any large body of water, because it is very possible to get lost in the ocean.
Oh my God.
They look at a globe and they look at a map online. They're like, oh yeah, that's not that big. I'm like,
man.
All you got to do is look at that Malaysia flight that literally vanished.
I was going to say that same thing. Vanished.
Like, they tracked it and they were like, all right, well, it has to be in this specific area. And they're like, we can find nothing. But then when you all the conspiracy theory stuff, but then you look online and it's just like, yo, that is some deep ass water.
Yeah.
That could be gone forever, y'all.
And God knows what the currents took it and moved it underneath the water, because there's varying currents and stuff.
That's like 80% of the reason why we can't find it.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys have kept up with that, but very recently, actually 2 weeks ago, they have new information. They know they have a very precise location of where it most likely is now, thanks to this guy who was pinging radio. He was pinging radio signals. I don't remember what he does. It was something to do with the weather, and he pinpointed where there were interruptions in his radio signals, and that's attributed to aircraft in the area.
Wow.
And he was able to actually map out the direct path of where the flight was. And what's crazy about MH370 or 390, whatever it was, is that it actually did a full circle. Like it did a very, very tight but short circle in like a 360-degree circle, and then went down. So it's really fascinating. It's on YouTube. You can go check it out. It's really, really cool with the new information. That's not the Bermuda Triangle. So
no, but still, like the example is just like the ocean is huge, man.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I'm just saying. Like people are like, well, how can something that big as a cruise ship can go without? Surely there's got to be some way. It was David Copperfield. He made it just disappear or something. Like, no, the ocean is huge, man. It can literally swallow anything. It can swallow like countries.
I remember a show that used to be on TV.
Me too.
That was called Sequest.
Yes,
oh
Sequest.
God, that sounds familiar.
Sequest.
Yes,
and it was literally Star Trek, but the ocean. And
I remember that show. Yeah,
and the more you think about it, the more you're like, oh my God, yeah, no, Earth is like a lot of water, and we don't spend any time exploring it. And but again, that goes to the mystery of like, what's in the Bermuda Triangle? We've never actually spent time under there with the aliens.
That's another thing. A lot of conspiracy theorists love to jump to is like we've only explored 2% of the ocean, and yet we're trying to explore space. What are they hiding? And it's like maybe it's just really hard. Also, it's there's a lot of risk of just dying. Honestly, I don't know what to tell you.
Honestly, you know what it is like 100% what I believe the deal is with the Bermuda Triangle is just that it is like super good, like accidentally is just like super good marketing.
Agreed.
Yeah. Like you said it yourself, like Sinvicta, like when you were saying like, yo, we love when we hear the word Bermuda in like media, right? But like to people who aren't from Bermuda, they hear it and all they literally like they have no idea what Bermuda is, probably not even exactly where it is in America at least, right? Yeah. And they're like, oh, the one thing I know that has to do with Bermuda is the Bermuda Triangle.
Yep.
So
and that is permeated through pop culture since I've been alive.
Yeah, and it sounds cool. You know what I mean? Like it sounds neat.
And it's just like Jesse was saying, if you want to add marquee value to your stories, just add the Bermuda Triangle on there. Boom.
Yeah,
you got yourself a headline.
Done. Yep. Dead on. You are dead on. We're going to do a little bit more about the Cyclops before we move to another disappearance. When after it disappeared, the summation was written, however, that before two of the Cyclops' sister ships, Proteus and Nereus, vanished at sea during World War II. So it was part of like many ships, I guess, that disappeared.
First of all, they need to calm down on the names.
Whatever, the fake Titanic.
The fake Titanic. It's all connected.
Both ships, however, were transporting, again, heavy loads of metallic ore similar to that which was loaded on the Cyclops during her fatal voyage. In both cases, their loss was theorized to have been the result of catastrophic structural failure, but a more outlandish theory attributes all three vessels' disappearance to the Bermuda Triangle.
But like, what does that even mean, to the Bermuda Triangle? Like, what am I imagining?
It's the Bermuda Triangle's fault to whatever's there.
The ocean just like opening and then the ship's just quietly.
Fall in.
Yeah. The ocean just closes back up.
I think Cthulhu and Lovecrafty and stuff is also heavily attributed to that, to my more modern day understanding of what the common belief about the mythos is. Yeah.
Is there? Yeah. Are we going to talk? I don't want to jump on this. Are we going to talk about that? Like what people think the Bermuda Triangle is?
I'm going to go over like what it most likely is. We can definitely talk about all the crazy stuff.
Yeah, I can tell you, I can give you many examples of what I've heard people ask me about and think about.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's the dreaming celestial at the end of Eternals.
Yeah,
there you go.
Whose hand comes up and doesn't do anything to the Earth's rotation.
Can I tell you? I was on Reddit the other day and I saw a random post on the front page that was like, when is Marvel going to address this? And I've never felt more seen. And I was like, thumbs up, gave an award. I was like, you are speaking my language. Thank you.
I think it's X-Men time when we see that. That's my prediction. That's my Poor Richard's Almanac prediction about the MCU. You're hearing it here, Chilluminati exclusive. If they go back to the Dreaming Celestial, it's X-Men time.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. I feel like we're going to get the introduction of X-Men in the new Doctor Strange movie, though.
God, I hope so.
Patrick Stewart is literally in that movie.
I know. He's in the movie.
No, but they're not just going to put the Fox one in, are they? Do you think?
It's Patrick Stewart. Yeah, but okay. Or it's Jean-Luc Picard. I'm fine.
I mean, he might be playing Professor X, but I'm just saying. Yes,
but I'm just different version.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, is it like a Garfield situation? Like, is it a
are we supposed to believe
Maguire situation?
The Fox's X-Men was part of the Illuminati Council all along. Like, no,
yes,
no way.
We are supposed to believe that. Don't ruin this for me.
It's okay.
All right. Yeah. We gotta
go back to the Bermuda Triangle, boys. Well, actually, last question for Jesse. What do you hate more, Eternals or Picard, the new show?
Here's the thing. Picard isn't over yet.
No, it's
so
not,
I can't say that. And Picard had Q for 1.5 episodes. So it's a little bit better than Eternals. I will give it that.
All right.
Eternals was though. Like no shade on Eternals, really. Like I don't really.
But Q is more entertaining than the entire 2.5 hours of Eternals.
Shout outs to John Delancey, man.
Yeah, he crushes that role. Okay, well, a little bit more. So again, we learned both ships were also traveling with heavy ore. So obviously they tried to search for the Cyclops. And one last little mysterious telegram was received before we'll leave this alone.
This is the good bit.
Near the time the search of the Cyclops was called off, a telegram was received by the State Department from Charles Ludlow Livingston, the U.S. consul on Barbados. It says, Secretary of State, Washington, D.C., April 2nd at 2 p.m. Department's 15th confidential Master Cyclops stated that required 600 tons of coal having sufficient on board to reach Bermuda. Engines very poor condition, not sufficient funds, and therefore requested payment by me. Unusually reticent. I have ascertained he took here ton fresh meat, ton flour, 1,000 pounds vegetables, paying therefore $775. From different sources gather the following. He had plenty of coal, alleged inferior, took coal to mix, probably had more than 1,500 tons. Master alluded to by others as damned Dutchman, apparently disliked by other officers. So the people hated the captain. They were not a fan of the captain at all. Rumored disturbances en route hither, men confined and executed. Also had some prisoners from the fleet in Brazilian waters, 1 life sentence. United States Consul General Gottschalk passenger, 231 crew exclusive of officers and passengers. Have names of crew, but not of all the officers and passengers. Many Germanic names appear. Number telegraph or wireless messages addressed to master or in care of ship were delivered at this port. All telegrams for Barbados on file, head office St. Thomas. I have to suggest scrutiny here. While not having any defined grounds, I fear fate worse than sinking, though possibly based on instinctive dislike felt toward master. Livingston Council.
That's what I'm saying. There's so much mystery to this ship. It's like it's like trouble layered on trouble layered. It's like a perfect storm for something to go wrong and for the ship to vanish. Okay, but here's the thing. Like the ship itself, even the people on board, if it wasn't sunk, piracy is very clearly another option as well.
Yes, and that's what they're talking about.
So many other options for this ship. But I also, you know what? I'd be fine if a void opened in the ocean and they got teleported to the moon. Like, that'd be fine too. Like, whatever.
Okay, but doesn't it say Bermuda there in that letter, though, at least once somewhere?
No, it was Barbados.
Yeah, Barbados. But like, it's
think about it.
You know, like, it's close enough.
To the pirate point, they were not only filled to the brim with what they had 2,000 tons more than they were supposed to be carrying. That is a payday for whoever ends up pirating that ship.
And more importantly is it was known. Like there was a fight between the captain and the like shipping people because they were like, look, you got to take this back, bro.
Yep. And he was like, no.
And apparently another thing that I learned is that the ore they were shipping was corrosive to the hull. Apparently,
which is just ridiculous.
Why did they send this on a ship? Why were they like, this is the most dangerous thing we've ever put on the ship. Fuck it. Let's just send it. You know what? Let's put more than normal.
Because money, baby.
Yeah. The engine's not working. Well, it's fine. You'll
Isn't
make
it a military vessel? Were they really after money?
It was like a transportation ship.
Yeah, it's just a transportation.
As a cargo ship. That just seems it's always spookier whenever when you hear like the broken English of old telegraphs as well.
You're trying to piece it together.
Yeah, the timbre and the delivery is always like, it's like, oh man, like they talk about fights and all of a sudden violence and you know, all that stuff leads to the mysticism. But
it sounds like somebody ordering breakfast at a Denny's.
Waffle House.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I love Waffle House so much.
Look, don't rub it in, okay?
I don't have any near me.
I have to get on an airplane. Nearby.
Nowhere near, not close. Nothing like within like 30 minutes of me. I'd have to go further for a Waffle House. I don't know any that are near where I live.
I have to get in an airplane to get to a Waffle House.
Yeah. We got to pass the Bermuda Triangle to get to a Waffle House.
Okay.
Thanks to Honey for sponsoring this episode. And if you don't know what Honey is, it's very simple. Honey is a way to shop online and save money. As you check out, you see that promo code field, you're like, dang, I have no coupons. That's where Honey comes in. Thanks to Honey, manually searching for coupon codes is a thing of the past. Honey is a free shopping tool that scours the internet for promo codes and applies the best one it finds to your cart. Honey supports over 30,000 stores online as well. Imagine you're shopping on one of your favorite sites, and when you check out, the Honey button drops down. All you got to do is hit apply coupons. Wait a few seconds as Honey searches for coupons it can find for the site. And if Honey finds a working coupon, it just puts it in for you, and you just get to watch the price drop. I recently got puppies, and I will tell you right now, I had no idea how much shit I actually had to buy for puppies. I easily saved close to $100 using Honey just to buy the stuff I needed online. Thank goodness. Honey has found its over 17 million members, over $2 billion in savings. If you don't have Honey, you could be straight up missing out. It's literally free and installs in a few seconds, and by getting it, you'll be doing yourself a solid and supporting this podcast. I'd never recommend something I don't use, so get Honey for free at joinhoney.com/chill. That's joinhoney.com/chill. All right, we're going to rewind time a little bit to a bit of an earlier disappearance, the HMS Juno, which was originally set sail in 1844 but disappeared in 1880. She was a 26-gun Spartan-class 6th-rate frigate of the Royal Navy that was launched in 1844 at Pembroke.
That is 100% the most badass effing thing you've ever uttered, ever.
That was a model that I bought in the summer of 1999 at Games Workshop at the mall.
She's taken part, that ship took part of some very big battles, including she carried out the historic role in 1857 of annexing the Cocos or Keeling Islands to the British Empire. She was then renamed HMS Mariner in the 1878 and then HMS Atlanta 2 weeks after that. So
they changed the name really quick. Not to make a reference to a song that's like over 5 years old. When you
Which
said
song
the
were you going to
Cocos,
reference?
huh?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yep, that's what I got. Yeah, I'm with you. So its disappearance was in 1880. The Atlanta was serving as a training ship at that point, when in 1880 she disappeared with her entire crew after setting sail from the Royal Navy dockyard in Bermuda for Falmouth, England on January 31st, 1880. It was presumed that she sank in a powerful storm, which crossed her route a couple of weeks after she sailed. The search for evidence of her fate attracted worldwide attention, and the Admiralty received more than 150 telegrams and 200 personal calls from anxious friends and relatives after it was announced that the ship went missing and possibly lost. That would be the worst time to have that job, just being constantly people like freaking out about where their family members have went. I can't imagine. That was not stressful.
Yeah, you can't drag it to the recycle bin or anything. You got to actually go one by one.
You got to actually listen. Yeah. Investigation of the ship's loss was eventually rendered difficult by the lack of any survivors. But one former member of her crew, able seaman John Varling, testified that he had found her exceedingly crank as being overweight. She rolled 32 degrees, and Captain Sterling is reported as having been heard to remark that she had rolled 1 degree more, had she rolled 1 degree more, she must have gone over and foundered. The young sailors were either too timid to go aloft or were incapacitated by seasickness. Varling states that they hid themselves away and could not be found when wanted by the boatswain's mate.
I mean, this sure does sound like it's obvious what happened here.
Isn't it? Like that's the point of these stories is like, if you look into them, it's pretty fucking obvious as to what happened to most of them.
The journal's like, man, we almost flipped over and died. One more thing. I hope that doesn't happen again. It would kill all of us if it happened. Anyway, I'm going to go to bed.
Let's off on the sea. We'll be fine. This actually kind of goes to something Jesse has said on the show many, many, many times. The reason people are so easily...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Is that because there is all the investigations came up bunk, they never really could figure it out. It opens that sliver of a crack for conspiracy theories to slither their way in and fill the hole with whatever they want.
So a lot of gross words all together really quickly.
Slytherin
I'm
hole.
very imaginative.
These moist conspiracy.
If you think of your typical conspiracy theorist, though, doesn't he kind of look moist in your mind?
I'm certainly very moist right now. You can take that however you want to take it.
The continuation of that thought is if you are, say, the Royal Navy and you put out like, well, it probably sunk, period, but we don't know. You've moved on. You go about your life, but like someone who's in the conspiracy, they now are constantly doing the conspiracy over and over and over again. So eventually that becomes the story because
it becomes
the only people updating information are those who are like, it really was the Bermuda Triangle.
It's the ... question mark at the very end of the title card. That's what people love to latch onto that. And when you got something that's so kind of open to interpretation like the Bermuda Triangle, it just invites all kinds of fun stuff to hear about.
It's the Bermuda Triangle is such a fun thing to talk about, I think, because it's one of those, elementary school's first conspiracy theory. So there's a lot you can look at and see like how conspiracy kind of got to where it is now just from going back here. It's nuts that what people are willing to kind of fill into the hole and like make it about something it's not. But I think something that we've never really said, or maybe we've only talked about a couple times, is like people do this. The reason people are latch on to conspiracy theories is because to them, it helps them make sense of a world that doesn't make sense to them. If they can just latch onto something that this must be the reason or this must be the reason, then the earth isn't chaos. And, there is a purpose and it's not just random bad things happening and you're safe and you have a reason. Because if you don't have that reason, then you're left with the harsh reality that the world doesn't give a shit about you. The world is going to go on. It's going to be it's chaotic and random bad things can and do happen all the time.
The existential terror of being alive. Did I tell you, was I talking about this last time on this show? I am on I talk into so many microphones these days. I'm getting old. One time my cat got out of my house and he ran out of the door and he only got 4 steps down the stairs before he froze with the utter weight of the entire just overwhelming earth and world and existence around him. Just the sheer insanity of it just crushed him into place. And I was just able to like go pick him up and take him back in the house.
Yeah. Indoor cats think they want to be outdoor cats until they get outdoors and then they're horrified.
And cat owners think they want to be cat walkers until their cat slithers out of the leash and runs 4 blocks away.
But the fascinating, interesting thing is that once you take the initial step and push past the fear,
it's so easy.
There, you are now in another world, and you were like, oh, I can't wait to explore. It doesn't mean it's not dangerous. It doesn't mean weird stuff that you can't control doesn't happen, but it does mean you're now more willing to accept things. And I think that, when you're stuck in your house as that cat, for example, everything makes sense because you know the house. And then like you can make up your like, oh, well, when the light goes out, that's because the sun, but like, just some dude turned out the light, like that kind of thing. And then once you go outside, like there's layers. And I think that, the Jesse version of this is like science will help you understand those layers.
Yeah, I agree. And I know it can be scary to think about like what the world is, but I mean, like I love conspiracy theories as much as the next person. I find them extremely fun and they're entertaining. And, there's always that element of what if. But as long as you keep that distance, then I think it's fun to do conspiracy theories. Like you said, Jesse said, as soon as you take the step and buy it wholesale, it's such a quick path to horrible, dark places that you don't want to be. It's just not where you want to be.
Basically, what we're saying is check out QAnon. It's pretty neat.
Good Lord.
I mean, it's also just like the dog chasing the tire. Like, what did he do when he actually catches the car? It's like, I mean, you got it now. Like, now what?
Conspiracy theories and all that stuff are only based in the chase.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is like you do not, as a conspiracy theorist, you do not win when you solve it.
Correct.
Once it's solved, you're like, it's done. So you always are like, there's more to it. There's another level.
Yeah,
especially if you are a YouTuber.
You can make that money. No, a great example is when the flat earthers proved themselves wrong and still didn't swallow it and still had to find a new way to explain what's going on.
Shot himself up into the air and died.
Oh my God. Yes, that's right.
I shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't laugh at somebody's death, but like,
no, man. But guys,
unbelievable poetry of it.
You need to make me a promise. If I ever get to the point where I come onto this podcast, I'm like, guys, I'm going to build my own ship and I'm going to go get to the aliens myself. You got to like put me in a cell.
But it's going to hit you with a blackjack over the head.
I'm not putting you in a cell. I'm getting a camera and putting a bunch of tripods everywhere just to watch you.
YouTube. Yeah. You got to make that content.
It's like, you do that and I'll start my own version of QAnon where it's just like John Delancey worship. I'm like, have you heard the message of Q? Do you know what Q is about? Are you aware of John Delancey?
Check
because
out
that man
this
can
hat.
act.
What do you think of this hat?
Jesse making his pamphlets already.
I know this is just an audio podcast, but we can all see the hat, right? Maybe not Jesse. He can't picture shit like that, but everybody else.
All right. The last bit about the HMS Juno is another one of those nail in the coffins. Again, why is it even a mystery to some people? While we don't know the exact circumstances around the Juno's or at this point, the Atlanta's disappearance, a gunboat by the name of Avon, which arrived in Portsmouth on April 19th from the Chile station, reported, quote, that at the Azores, she noticed immense quantities of wreckage floating about. In fact, the sea was strewn with spars.
Beautiful.
2 days later, so just straight up found wreckage.
Love the poetry of the line on that.
Found wreckage.
The sea was strewn with spars. I like that.
Strewn with spars. I like that. 1880s. 2 days later, amid mounting concern that the loss of the ship might have been prevented had her crew not been so inexperienced, because remember, it was a training ship, the Times then editorialized, quote, there can be no sunken wreck with just the bow above water was sighted at, and they give the coordinates, on September 14th by German brig W. von Frieden. It was thought that this could have been the wreck of the Atlanta. And that's kind of like where that mystery, in my opinion, ends. It feels like we have an answer to it, but because the official position on it at that time and really hasn't changed is we don't really know, then people have been able to jump into that. We're going to cover Flight 19, but this is like, we're talking way longer than I thought we were about some of these things. So let me do one more ship disappearance before we go to Flight 19. The disappearance of the Carroll A. Deering. This is a ship that was built in Bath, Maine in 1919 by the G.G. Deering Company for commercial use. So it was a commercial ship. The owner of the company named the ship after his son. One of the last large commercial sailing vessels, the ship was designed to carry cargo and had been in service for a year when it began its final voyage to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. On July 19th, 1920, the Deering sailing from Puerto Rico arrived at Newport News to pick up a cargo of coal for delivery to Rio de Janeiro. The ship was captained by William H. Merritt. Merritt was a hero of World War I who had been cited for bravery under fire for saving his entire crew when his previous command, the Deering-built five-masted schooner Dorothy B. Barrett, was sunk by the German submarine U-117 off Cape May, New Jersey in 1918. So he did a really good job, I guess, just taking over. Merritt's son, Sewell, Sewall. I don't know how you would say that because nobody has named that anymore.
Sewell? I don't.
Yeah, maybe.
Sewell? I don't. Dude, that's, I'm sorry to anyone with that name. I wish I could.
It's a 1919
I wish
name,
I could represent for you, dudes.
That was Merritt's son. Sewell was his first mate, and he had a 10-man crew made up entirely of Scandinavians, mostly Danes. On August 26, 1920, the Deering cleared the Virginia Capes bound for Rio, but Captain Merritt soon fell seriously ill, and the Deering turned back and put into the port of Lewes, Delaware, to drop off Merritt and his son. The Deering Company recruited Captain Willis B. Wormel, a retired 66-year-old veteran sea captain, to replace him on the voyage to Brazil. Charles B. McClellan was hired on as first mate. The Deering, with Wormel in command, set sail for Rio on September 8th, 1920, arriving there and delivering its cargo without incident. Wormel gave his crew leave and met with Captain Goodwin, an old friend who captained another cargo vessel that was docked in Rio. Wormel spoke of his crew with disdain, though he claimed to trust the engineer Herbert Bates, whom Goodwin was acquainted with. The Deering left Rio on December 2nd, 1920, and stopped for supplies in Barbados. First mate McClellan got drunk in town and complained to Captain Hugh Norton of the Snow that he could not discipline the crew without Wormel interfering, and that he had to do all the navigating owing to Wormel's poor eyesight. I mean, they did hire a 66-year-old retired sea captain
it really
as the
makes
new captain.
You wonder what may have happened aboard the ship.
Right. Later, Captain Norton, his first mate, and another captain were in the Continental Cafe and heard McClellan say, quote, "I'll get the captain before we get to Norfolk, I will."
I swear to fucking God, this ship is going to crash. If I don't, what's what?
However, McClellan was arrested in a drunken state, but on January 9th, Wormel forgave him, bailed him out of jail, and set sail for Hampton Roads. The ship was next sighted by the Cape Lookout lightship off North Carolina on January 28th, 1921, when the Deering hailed it. The lightship's keeper, Captain Jacobson, reported that a tall, thin man with reddish hair and a foreign accent, speaking through a megaphone, told him the vessel had lost its anchors in a storm off Cape Fear and asked that the ship's owners, the G.G. Deering Company, be notified.
A megaphone?
Yeah, it's 1921, baby.
They're just like,
megaphone.
"Hey, just so you know, this is the news."
This is the news, see?
Yeah, I guess that's the best way to communicate when you're on a ship and far away. I don't know. It's weird. Jacobson took note of this, but his radio was out, so he was unable to report it to the Deering Company. He also noticed that the crew seemed to be milling around on the quarterdeck of the ship, an area where they were not usually allowed. The following afternoon, the crew of another vessel transiting the area spotted the Deering sailing a course that would take it directly onto the Diamond Shoals. Do you guys know what the Diamond Shoals are?
No.
They are infamous for as being an always shifting cluster of shallow underwater sandbars that extend 8 miles out from Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, hidden beneath the waves and constantly changing in both form and depth. And that's where the Deering ship was sailing directly towards.
This is just a perfect recipe for disaster.
An old man captain, a first mate who hates him, and
shifting
just
sandbars 8 miles long. Yeah, what could go wrong? What's the
one
problem?
Of those things alone could also sink the ship. They, however, saw no one on the ship's decks and didn't attempt to hail the schooner, assuming her crew would spot the Cape Hatteras lighthouse or the Diamond Shoals lightship and change course to avoid wrecking on the shoals. We don't know if they did or didn't, but let's find out what we know next. On January 31st, 1921, the Deering was sighted at dawn by surfman C.P. Brady, who was on lookout duty at the Coast Guard station at Cape Hatteras. The vessel was hard aground with all sails set on the outer edge of the Diamond Shoals. These shoals that extended offshore from Cape Hatteras have been notorious as a common site of shipwrecks for centuries and are known as the Graveyard of the Atlantic, which is not a place
that's not a good name, period. Talk about bad PR. That's it right there.
It's like and if that other ship had at least tried to contact them, they may have been able to avoid this altogether if this is what happened, which there's like a very high probability it is. Rescue ships were unable to approach the vessel owing to bad weather. The ship was not boarded until February 4th after being battered by the surf for several days. And it became clear that the schooner had been completely abandoned. So when they went on the ship, the crew was gone. No crew. Her steering equipment was found to be damaged, with the wheel shattered, the binacle box stove in, and the rudder disengaged from its stock. The ship's log and navigation equipment were gone, along with the crew's personal effects and the ship's 2 lifeboats. In the vessel's galley, it appeared that certain foodstuffs were being prepared for the next day's meal at the time of the abandonment. The Coast Guard cutter Manning attempted to salvage the Deering, but found it impossible. The vessel was declared a hazard to navigation and was destroyed using dynamite on March 4th to prevent it from becoming a danger to other vessels. A portion of the ship's bow later drifted ashore on Ocracoke Island. Wooden timbers from the wreck also washed ashore on Hatteras Island and were used by local residents to build houses.
I hope I get so fucked up that somebody blows me up with dynamite.
Just destroy. I mean, that would have been fun. That would have been a fun day on the job, man. If you're out there on the ship getting to watch the ship blow up,
it'd be worth working there every other day that you work there just for that day. Real talk.
It really would be. I would have loved to just be able to watch that. So the real mystery here, again, isn't necessarily the ship, but the crew all disappeared. Now, granted, they took lifeboats out, and it's clearly they abandoned the ship. But there was an investigation. The U.S. government launched an extensive investigation into the disappearance of the crew. 5 departments of the government, Commerce, Treasury, Justice, Navy, and State, looked into the case. Herbert Hoover, then Secretary of Commerce, was intrigued by the fact that several other vessels of various nationalities, most notably the sulfur freighter Hewitt, had also disappeared in roughly the same area. Although most of these vessels were later revealed to have been sailing in the vicinity of a series of particularly powerful hurricanes,
God.
the Hewing, I know.
They were revealed
The
to
Hewing
each be
Deering-
having 3 ticking bombs on board.
The Hewitt and Deering were proven to have been sailing away from the area of the storm at the time. Hoover's assistant, Lawrence Ritchie, was placed in charge of the investigation, and Ritchie tried to chart what happened to the vessel between its last sighting at Cape Lookout and its running aground at the Diamond Shoals by reading the logbooks of the Coast Guard lightships stationed in those areas. When an Italian inquiry into the disappearance of the vessel Monte San Michele confirmed that there had been strong hurricanes in the vicinity, mutiny was then accepted as the explanation for the Deering incident, which would come together with the first mate not liking the captain. The investigation was closed in late 1922 with 0 official finding of the incident, therefore leaving that open for conspiracy theorists to fill in. Worse is of course, people attribute the government to lying. They don't want you to know what actually happened to them. They don't want you to know what actually happened in Bermuda Triangle. Maybe they got abducted by aliens and there was evidence there, that kind of nonsense.
Yeah, I just don't understand how does it reach such fanatical belief about something that seems so black and white on paper, then you're going to try to attribute to some sort of weird conspiracy, alien magic sort of happening. I don't understand where that seeps
Where's
itself
the
into
weird
this.
thing? Where's the weird thing?
Yeah,
in this?
the weird thing actually first showed up in 1931. The disappearance of the ship's crew had been cited by innumerable authors dealing with anomalous phenomena and the supernatural. Charles Fort had a book called Lo, written in 1931, first mentioning this vessel in a mysterious context, and many subsequent chroniclers of sea mysteries then followed suit. Since this vessel sailed in the area generally considered to be part of the so-called Bermuda Triangle, the disappearance of the crew has often been tied to the fact. Again, somebody immediately saw a way to fluff up a story, sell something, and he did. And that was the first seed to plant the conspiracy that would then grow decades upon decades and upon decades. You have to consider the source,
though, of who finally sowed that seed.
Yeah, but then see, if you ask conspiracy theorists what's the source, you don't really get a straight answer.
Right. I need to stress when you said possible hurricanes in the area. I just want to make sure everyone is aware. Up until, I don't know, the last 100, maybe 120 years, were we even attempting to understand hurricane weather? So there, during that Bermuda Triangle area, when you see hurricanes on the news, the Weather Channel, whatever, you can go look up hurricane paths right now. Before they hit Florida and Louisiana and Texas, they go right through that area every single time. That's the path of, and so numerous storms every year always happen there. Then add on to the fact that is where the Gulf Stream is. And for those of you listening who don't know what the Gulf Stream is, imagine an underwater river that is almost 6 miles an hour. Yeah. But a river underwater, super fast. It's why the hurricanes blow through that area. And so if anything sinks, it doesn't just sink. It gets swept away in an underwater river. And then there's all the islands in the area. And if you're off track, if you're knocked anywhere, you can hit rocks, you can hit whatever. There's so many ways to sink in that area that I'd be more worried about those things than the UFO that came and got me,
Right. I just want the list of things that could have sank these dudes is huge.
Yeah.
Hurricanes, Diamond Shoals, bad captain, angry first mate, mutiny, piracy. There's so many things that could have taken these guys down. But again, right in 4 or 5 years later or whatever, they're already making, stories about what it paranormally what it could be.
It's too cool. It's just too cool of a prospect, unfortunately.
Yeah,
it captures the imagination. Yeah, it makes you think what if?
Yeah. And now you got these days. You think about you hear it being attributed to like there's electromagnetic pulses there, or they got methane gases that kind of come out of the water, and that messes with instrumentation, all that kind of stuff. And and those are also great boogeymen as well, because you can't see them. You can't physically see that stuff happen. So it's like, well,
it's just complicated enough. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just complicated enough to where the layman is not going to understand what that means when there was a methane gas release or something like that from underwater. All they see or they hear about or reports about of an airplane just mysteriously just falling for no reason at all. No missile was shot. No one bailed out or anything like that. Just a plane falls in the water. It's got to be something crazy that happens over there.
Yep. That's always how it goes.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And but we're talking about the plane one right now, actually. But this will be the last one that we cover on this episode. Guys, if you want more and you're really intrigued by these, this is
surprisingly interesting in a like different way than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Again, when I was doing because it's one of those topics where if you even try to crack the surface a little bit, the truth is just kind of right there. Like, it's not far. You don't have to look hard to see like why or what's going on.
If you want to know if you want to know what an Alex episode is, like in terms of research, it's just doing that like 100 times before you find anything interesting. Like every cool thing is like not actually cool on the internet.
Well, I can tell you that I'm living there for 10 years. We saw, going back to what Jesse said, you see hurricanes, man. I've seen huge hurricanes blow through there. I mean, there was like, during the summertime months, and if you're from Bermuda, you just hunker down. It's just like, yeah, we got another one coming. No school today. Just hold out hope that these buildings can take it, because you have to remember there's no back in the 80s. There's no wooden structures. It's all limestone, sandstone stuff. So they are built to withstand. These are hardy people. And they know how to build houses. We didn't have any like just to give you an example, our water that we had was not from any kind of centralized purification plants or anything like that. We drank rainwater. We flushed the toilet with rainwater. And we had wells underneath the houses and the foundations and stuff. We had to purify it with tablets, that sort of thing. But that's like, damn, that's what we had to live through back then. And it's not like we have, their sophisticated weather systems or anything like that now. It's just like, yeah, a hurricane's coming. I mean, of course we had radar. There was a NASA station there and everything like that. It wasn't like Bermuda wasn't like third world by any means, stretch of imagination, but we're not talking about Houston either though. So those hurricanes, when they blow in, they would come in hard, and you would always hear about ships going down, airplanes having to navigate around the entire area of what's now known as the Bermuda Triangle, that sort of thing. So, all kinds of stories could happen from there, but the hurricane season in Bermuda was just an absolute nightmare. Especially as a kid.
Yeah, it sounds worse than a fucking UFO coming.
Yeah, way worse.
I prefer a UFO to show up.
Yeah, luckily there was no huge loss of life when I was living there anyway, and structural damage wasn't too bad. But it's, again, those houses that are there, if you just Google image search any type of Bermudian house, you'll see it. It's all white roofs with slots in them. That's how we gathered water. That like there's little slits in the roof that water permeates down and trickles down through.
I totally see it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we got water. So these houses are built to withstand huge storms, but the ships, on the other hand, are not.
Oh my God, it's fucking beautiful there. What the hell?
It's heaven on earth. I wish I could go back home.
It's like an RPG town. This is ridiculous.
Thanks to Talkspace for sponsoring this episode. And Talkspace has been with us now for, I think, over a year at this point. And I, along with my two fellow hosts, are huge proponents of mental health. You get your body checked, you get your teeth checked, you get your eyes checked. Why do people not think your brain is just as important? There's just something rejuvenating about getting down to what's essential and starting fresh, and you can kind of go the same way with your mind. Over the years, thoughts and emotions can build up, and that's why it's important to talk to someone who's trained to help you declutter your mental space. I've said it every single time. I've been in therapy now for like 2 years. It has changed my life in the best way possible. And if you are on the fence about whether you want to go to therapy or not, I urge you to please take care of yourself first and foremost. Taking the first steps towards getting help can be and is very scary. But no matter where you are in your mental health journey, Talking to a therapist who's trained to help makes a huge difference. Literally, take it from me. I wouldn't have moved across the country if it wasn't for my therapist, and I promise you, it was a good thing. Your mental health is way too important to rely on Dr. Google, so with Talkspace, you're going to get 24/7 text, audio, and video messaging. Talkspace lets you talk to a licensed therapist without needing an appointment. They have thousands of therapists across dozens of specialities. Once you match with your therapist, you can message with them anytime, anywhere. Talkspace is private, secure, and most importantly, accessible. It's everything you love about therapy without the stuff that gets in the way. Match with your dedicated therapist today at Talkspace.com and use our promo code CHILL during sign up to get $100 off your first month. That's $100 off at Talkspace.com using our promo code CHILL.
And what's interesting, again, going back to what Matha said earlier, is that it's much easier, and I know this sounds crazy, but it's much easier for people to accept like either malevolent or benevolent alien force or like some paranormal thing rather than the complete randomness of being caught in the wrong place, the wrong time of a hurricane or bad weather. And just like shit happens. It's much easier to be like, no, this is clearly something else because the human brain is built to form patterns. And so if we see all these things, we're like, there must be something else rather than just like, yo, sometimes terrible stuff happens. And like, that sucks, dude.
And like when we're talking about explanations, we'll talk about that pattern and if there even is a pattern at all. But as always, at the end of the episode, in typical Mathis fashion, I'll leave you with a little bit of a maybe paranormal thought. Yeah, we got to leave it there. You know? All right. For the last one, we're going to talk about Flight 19. Flight 19 was the designation of a group of 5 General Motors Eastern Aircraft Division TBM Avenger torpedo bombers that ended up disappearing over the Bermuda Triangle on December 5th, 1945, after losing contact with a United States Navy overwater navigation training flight from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
This is a good one, Jesse. Pay attention.
I'm aware of it. It's the best one.
It is the best one. It's the one that I heard of as a kid too.
Yeah.
All 14 airmen on the flight were lost, as were all 13 crew members of a Martin PBM Mariner flying boat that subsequently launched from Naval Air Station Banana River to search for Flight 19. So the thing that even went out looking for him disappeared. A report by Navy investigators concluded that flight leader Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor mistook small islands offshore for the Florida Keys after his compass stopped working, resulting in the flight heading over open sea and away from land. The report was later amended by the Navy to read, quote, case unknown, to avoid blaming Taylor for the loss of 5 aircraft and 14 men. We'll go through the whole thing, however, and it's interesting because Bermuda Triangle is one of the only places where true north and magnetic north line up, and it actually screws with compasses in areas there. So that it would immediately explain for why their compasses would have been acting weirdly there. So Flight 19 undertook a routine navigation and combat training exercise in TBM-type aircraft. The assignment was called Navigation Problem Number 1. Very exciting name. A combination of bombing and navigation, which other flights had completed and were scheduled to undertake that day. The flight leader was United States Navy Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, who had about 2,500 hours in flying, mostly in aircraft of this type, while his trainee pilots had about 300 total and 60 flight hours in the Avenger. Taylor had completed a combat tour in the Pacific Theater as torpedo bomber pilot on the aircraft USS Hancock and had recently arrived from NAS Miami, where he had also been a VTB, which is a torpedo bombing plane instructor. The student pilots had recently completed other training missions in the area where the flight was to take place. They were U.S. Marine Captains Edward Joseph Powers and George William Stivers, U.S. Marine Second Lieutenant Forrest James Gerber, and USN Ensign Joseph Tipton Bossy. Their call sign started with Foxtare, Foxtare. The aircraft were 3 TBM-1Cs, which is the bombers, 1 TBM-1E, and 1 TBM-3. Each aircraft was a version of the Grumman TBF Avenger, built by General Motors Eastern Aircraft Division under wartime production license. Under the U.S. Navy aircraft designation system used during World War II, Grumman-built Avengers were designated TBF, and GM-built aircraft such as these were designed a designated TBM. Each was fully fueled, and during pre-flight checks, it was discovered they were all missing clocks. Navigation of the route was intended to teach dead reckoning principles, which involved calculating, among other things, elapsed time. So they were being put to the test. The apparent lack of timekeeping equipment was not a cause for concern, as it was assumed each man had his own watch. Takeoff was scheduled for 1345 hours local time, but the late arrival of Taylor delayed departure until 1410. Weather at NAS Fort Lauderdale was described as, quote, favorable, sea state, moderate to rough. Taylor was supervising the mission, and a trainee pilot had the role of leader out front. Called Navy Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida, navigation problem number 1. The exercise, which is such a fucking boring name for a god. Like, can you be like Operation Bomb Training would be more fun than that. The exercise involved 3 different legs, but the actual flight should have flown 4. After takeoff, they flew on a heading of 091 degrees, which is almost due east, for 56 nautical miles, which is 64 miles, until reaching Hen and Chicken Shoals, where low-level bombing practice was carried out. The flight was to continue on that heading for another 67 nautical miles, 77 R miles, before turning onto a course of 346 degrees for 84 miles, in the process over flying Grand Bahama Island. The next scheduled turn was to a heading of 240 degrees to fly 140 miles, at the end of which the exercise was completed and the Avengers would turn left to then return to NAS Fort Lauderdale. Radio conversations between the pilots were overheard by base and other aircraft in the area. The practice bombing operation is known to have been carried out because at about 1500, a pilot requested and was given permission to drop his last bomb. 40 minutes later, another flight instructor, Lieutenant Robert F. Cox in FT-74, who was forming up with his group of students for the same mission, received an unidentified transmission. An unidentified crew member asked Powers, one of the students, for his compass reading. Powers replied, quote, I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn. Cox transmitted, this is FT-74, plane or boat calling Powers. Please identify yourself so someone can come help you. The response after a few moments was a request from the others in the flight for suggestions. FT-74 tried again, and a man identified as FT-28, who would be Taylor, came on. FT-28, this is FT-74. What is your trouble? Both my compasses are out, Taylor replied. And I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm overland, but it's broken. I am sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale. FT-74 informed the NAS that aircraft were lost, then advised Taylor to put the Sun on his port wing and fly north up the coast to Fort Lauderdale. Base operations then asked if the flight leader's aircraft was equipped with a standard YG, which is an identify friend or foe transmitter, which could be used to triangulate the flight's position. But the message was not acknowledged by FT-28. Later, he would indicate that his transmitter was activated. Instead, at 1645, FT-28 radioed, quote, we are heading 030 degrees for 45 minutes. Then we will fly north to make sure we are not over the Gulf of Mexico. During this time, no bearings could be made on the flight, and IFF could not be picked up. Taylor was told to broadcast on 4,805 kilohertz. This order was not acknowledged, so he was asked to switch to 3,000 kilohertz, the search and rescue frequency. Taylor replied, I cannot switch frequencies. I must keep my plane intact. At 1656, Taylor was again asked to turn on his transmitter for YG if he had one. He did not acknowledge, but a few minutes later advised his flight, quote, change course to 090 degrees due east for 10 minutes. About the same time, someone in the flight said, quote, damn it, if we could just fly west, we would get home. Head west, damn it.
This is like a movie, dude. This is crazy.
It is really wild.
I'm not going to say, look, this is my favorite story from Bermuda Triangle, and more importantly, the one you should have led with. Just putting it out there.
Oh, wow.
This is a legit mystery. This is like really good.
End on a strong note.
Flight 19 is very infamous.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah.
Wait till part 2 of this episode.
We'll see you next time, everybody.
This difference of opinion later led to questions about why the students did not simply head west on their own. It has been explained that this can be attributed to military discipline. As the weather deteriorated, radio contact became intermittent, and it was believed that the 5 aircraft by this point were more than 230 miles out to sea east of the Florida peninsula. Taylor radioed, quote, "We'll fly 270 degrees west until landfall. We're running out of gas," and requested a weather check at 1724. By 1750, several land-based radio stations had triangulated Flight 19's position as being within 120 miles, a radius of 29 degrees north, 79 degrees west. Flight 19 was north of the Bahamas and well off the coast of Central Florida, but nobody transmitted this information on an open, repetitive basis. At 1804, Taylor radioed to his flight, quote, "Holding 270. We didn't fly far enough east. We may as well just turn around and fly east again." By that time, the weather had deteriorated even more and the sun had set. Around 1820, Taylor's last message was received. It's also been reported that Taylor's last message was received at 1904, not 1820, so there's a discrepancy in time. He was heard saying, quote, "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." And that was the last transmission that they got.
Jesus Christ.
That's so good. It's so good.
It's wild. As it became obvious that the flight was lost, air bases, aircraft, and merchant ships were alerted. A consolidated PBY Catalina departed after 1800 to search for Flight 19 and guide them back if they could be located. After dark, 2 Martin PBM Mariner flying boats originally scheduled for their own training flights were diverted to perform square pattern searches in the area west of 29 North, 79 West. U.S. Navy Squadron Training 49 PBM-5 took off at 1927 from the Naval Air Station Banana River, called in a routine radio message at 1930, and then was never heard from again. Mm-hmm. At 21:15, the tanker SS Gaines Mills reported it had observed flames from an apparent explosion leaping 100 feet high and burning for 10 minutes at position 28.59 north, 80.25 west. So really close to the last the last location received by Taylor. Captain Shona Stanley reported unsuccessfully searching for survivors through a pool of oil and aviation gasoline. The escort carrier USS Solomons also reported losing radar contact with an aircraft at the same position and time. So there is a little evidence as to where they were and where they kind of went down.
Yeah. But
a 500-page Navy Board of Investigation report published a few months later made several observations. One, flight leader Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor had mistakenly believed that the small islands he passed over were the Florida Keys, that his flight was over the Gulf of Mexico, and that heading northeast would take them to Florida. It was determined that Taylor had passed over the Bahamas as scheduled, and he did in fact lead his flight to the northeast over the Atlantic. The report noted that some subordinate officers did likely know their approximate position as indicated by radio transmissions, stating that flying west would result in reaching the mainland. 2, Taylor was not at fault because the compasses stopped working. And 3, the loss of PBM-5 Buno was attributed to an explosion. This report was subsequently amended to cause unknown, as stated earlier, by the Navy after Taylor's mother contended that the Navy was unfairly blaming her son for the loss of 5 aircraft and 14 men, when the Navy had neither the bodies nor the airplanes as evidence, and thus is the first crack of conspiracy. The mother herself didn't want to believe what likely happened.
But
had flight
there is so much good stuff here. And like what the mystery is of this thing, that it's still, this is one of those ones that captures the imagination, because it's like they sent people. They, like the government was looking for these dudes. It was like an all hands. People were trying to find them. But, you know, again, if you think about it, they were probably looking in the wrong place. And that's why no one found them. But like, it's a fascinating story because they were talking to them and then they were gone.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it captures the imagination.
And the people who were sent to go find them also disappeared. That's the thing.
That adds on to it. It's just like the people immediately were never seen from again.
All you need to do is when you go flying, if you've ever flown over the ocean or any body of water at night, If you look out the window, you tell me what up and down is.
It can get real psychedelic out there for real.
You tell me where the water is and where the sky, it's all black.
Go check on Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's on Game Pass now. You have no excuse.
Dude, it was the scariest flights for me were international. Always being over the ocean. And at night, like you said, too, it's so fucking scary.
You can't see anything.
It's so scary.
Yeah, the people who believe that's they just look at the map going back to what we said like an hour ago. It's like, it doesn't look all that big. It's like, dude, you've never been over the ocean before. It is the void. At nighttime, especially, it is the void.
Yeah.
I remember having thoughts of being like, when I was flying for the first time internationally, being like, how are we still over the ocean? Doesn't make sense to me. Like, how are we still over the ocean?
Now imagine the Pacific.
Yeah. It's even bigger. Scary. It's even bigger.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yep.
Back to the Flight 19. Had Flight 19 actually been where Taylor believed it to be, the flight would have made landfall with the Florida coastline within 20 minutes, depending on how far down they were. However, a later reconstruction of the incident showed that the islands visible to Taylor were probably the Bahamas, well northeast of the Keys, and that Flight 19 was exactly where it should have been. The Board of Investigation found that because of his belief that he was on a base course toward Florida, Taylor actually guided the flight farther northeast and out to sea. Further, it was general knowledge at NAS Fort Lauderdale that if a pilot ever became lost in the area to fly a heading of 270 degrees due west, that by the time the flight actually turned west, they were likely so far out to sea they had already passed their aircraft's fuel endurance. So if he's already saying he has to turn that much, it's over.
Yeah.
They won't have enough fuel to get there.
Yeah, and it didn't help that the compasses were also rendered useless due to the geolocation of where they were.
Yep. This factor, combined with bad weather and the ditching characteristics of the Avenger, meant that there was little hope of rescue, even if they had managed to stay afloat. It is possible that Taylor overshot Gorda Cay and instead reached another landmass in the southern Abaco Islands. He then proceeded northwest as planned. He fully expected to find the Grand Bahama Island lying in front of him as expected. Instead, he eventually saw a landmass to his right side, the northern part of Abaco Island. Believing that this landmass to his right was the Grand Bahama Island and his compass was malfunctioning, he set a course to what he thought was southwest to head straight back to Fort Lauderdale. However, in reality, this changed his course farther northwest toward open ocean. To further add to his confusion, he encountered a series of islands north of Abaco Island, which look very similar to the Key West Islands. The control tower then suggested that Taylor's team should fly west, which would have taken them to the landmass of Florida eventually. Taylor headed for what he thought was west, but in reality was northwest, also parallel to Florida. After trying that for a while and with no land in sight, Taylor decided that it was impossible for them to fly so far west and not reach Florida. He believed that he might have been near the Key West Islands. What followed was a series of serious conversations between Taylor, his other aircrew, and the control tower. Taylor was not sure whether he was near Bahama or Key West, and he was not sure which direction he faced due to compass malfunction. The control tower informed Taylor that he could not be in Key West since the wind that day did not blow that way. Some of the aircrew believed that their compass was working. Taylor then set a course northeast according to their compass, which should take them to Florida if they were in Key West. When that failed, Taylor set a course west according to their compass, which should have taken them to Florida if they were in Bahama. If Taylor stayed this course, he would have reached land before running out of fuel. However, at some point, Taylor decided that he had tried going west enough. He then once again set a course northeast, thinking they were near Key West after all. Finally, his flight would run out of fuel and may have crashed into the ocean somewhere north of Abaco Island in the east of Florida. But we don't know. This is all conjecture, piecing together what little information they have and where locations were pinged and assuming this is kind of like the path it took. There was wreckage found in 1986 that was mistaken for Flight 19, but it was not Flight 19 they discovered later on. And Flight 19 would further kind of push its myth when it was included in the 1977 science fiction film Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, they're the guys they brought back.
Yep. Discovered from the... Yeah,
You've
that's right.
seen it. You know
yeah,
now.
I have. I've seen that movie. But that more or less is the Flight 19 disappearance over, again, the Bermuda Triangle. While definitely more mysterious than the others, there still feels like there's enough evidence to kind of piece together a likely or logical scenario that happened to them. And it's tragic. And but it was just their compasses weren't working. They were all torn on where they thought they were. And when things got bad, it was already too late. And if they were where everybody thought they were, what's worse is to think like, even if they started going back, they were dead.
Well,
they were done.
The reason why this one also is so popular is because there's so many other more complicated moving parts in the story, because not only it's not just one person, it's a whole squadron of planes. On top of that, the people who were sent to go search for them also disappeared. Then you also have the mysterious explosion that still no one has any explanation for whatsoever, whether it's spontaneously combusted or there was an attack or something happened to that ship, and all of that sort of just it feeds into each other, and it just makes and mutates, and next thing you know, you got this huge giant movie that you're able to make out of it, and people are off to the races with it.
You're 1000% correct. Now we get to the fun part. Let's talk a little bit about what is likely going on in the Bermuda Triangle after some research, and thanks to Larry Cush and his book as well, and all the work he ended up doing to really kind of try to figure out what the fuck the Bermuda Triangle is about. So we're just going to talk about a few of the points, and we'll wrap up the episode. So the big first one is that when he was out there looking and studying about not only the ships and missing gear disappearances of the Bermuda Triangle, he widened his scope. He looked at other parts of the ocean to really see if Bermuda Triangle had a higher pattern of things going missing than other parts of the world where things typically travel quite a lot. And what he discovered was that the ships and aircraft reported missing in the area was not significantly greater, proportionally speaking, than in any other part of the ocean.
Interesting.
Yeah. In an area frequented by tropical cyclones, the number of disappearances that did occur were, for the most part, neither disproportionate, unlikely, nor mysterious.
Not a great start.
It just not a good start. Yeah, it should be typical and kind of, I guess, hits the typical amount of disappearances that any ships going through an area where tropical cyclones are happening constantly that would happen. Furthermore, Berlitz and other writers would often fail to mention such storms or even represent that disappearance as having happened in calm conditions when meteorological records clearly contradict the stories. So again, people see an avenue, they'll leave out little details, maybe tweak little details, and suddenly things don't make sense anymore. And that's what he found people were doing because he did the footwork. He cracked into like what was actually going on that day. And what he also found was that the numbers themselves had been exaggerated by really sloppy research. For instance, a boat's disappearance would be reported, but its eventual, if belated return to port may not have been reported. So, so ships are disappearing because paperwork isn't being done properly. And that immediately gets fed into the Bermuda Triangle.
It disappeared for a little bit, but...
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's like he just went and asked, and basically, no, they showed up. They were here. We know they were here. It's nuts. Moreover, some disappearances had in fact never actually happened. One plane crash was said to have taken place in 1937 off Daytona Beach, Florida, in front of hundreds of witnesses. And when he went to go check the local papers, nothing had been revealed. There had been no articles about any crazy crash that hundreds of people supposedly saw. He concluded generally that the legend of the Bermuda Triangle is basically a manufactured mystery perpetuated by writers who either purposely or unknowingly made use of misconceptions, faulty reasoning, and sensationalism. And that's, I think, where I mostly fall when it comes to the Bermuda Triangle, especially like reading up on it a lot. I will say my one mysterious note is that if aliens were to abduct people, wouldn't it be the smart place to abduct people that are already going missing on a regular basis? And it would just be none the wiser? I'm just saying. I'm just going to put that out there.
I mean, underwater is the best place to hide somebody. So, if you've seen the deep or the abyss, hey, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, there's other things too, like the Gulf Stream, just straight up human error, methane hydrate. Like there's a ton of reasons that ships can go missing. But I think the big thing for me when I was reading the book is that just the fact that there really isn't a greater number of ships that go missing in the area.
It's just PR, man. The word Bermuda sounds cool. The fact that it's a triangle makes it sound like it's a James Bond movie. That's all it is. It's from the 60s. The same shit.
I need you to know, Alex, I want to jump off of that statement because tonight, as we were talking, I typed in to Google Bermuda Triangle. The first thing that popped up for me was Cypress Grove, Bermuda Triangle, pasteurized goat milk cheese. That's the first thing that popped up.
Delicious.
And what's crazier is that you can get it, Alex, at a restaurant that's like in the general area of where we're at, which is freaking hilarious.
Delicious.
And it literally is just cheese shaped like a triangle. It's like marketing stuff. It's just it's cheese.
All cheese is shaped like a triangle almost.
But here's the best part. I was like, oh, this cheese must be from Bermuda. No, it's made in California.
Of course it is.
Happy goats.
Those dang Californians, man.
They're happy.
You gotta love
They're
the
happy
California
folk.
Bermuda Triangle
You've
cheese.
got to admit though, and I'm pretty sure that Jesse and Mathis haven't seen it, Alex, but I think that you'd be most impressed with it. We do have one of the best looking flags.
That's true. That's actually
the Bermudian flag is actually fire.
Yeah, it's got a lot going on. It looks like like a sick like polo jersey, like a cool like old school.
That's a great way to describe that.
Old school athletics. Like it looks like a killer rugby team or something would have that.
Yep. I love our flag. It's one of my favorite flags ever. It's so good.
It's a vibe.
It is. It's good. Well, that's it, boys, for our Bermuda Triangle episode. Thank you so much, Sinvicta, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, very, very cool.
Firsthand knowledge of like living there and what if there was. It was interesting to find out that the people who live there don't really know about what the Bermuda Triangle myth even is.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting to note that the coat of arms of Bermuda does seem to be a ship disappearing into the fog.
Oh, the mystery continues.
That is part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, can I just say, I don't want to like put this out there, but I'm gonna. Do you think Bermuda is in on it? Are they working with the aliens? And that's why they're like, oh, Bermuda Triangle. We don't know what that is. Is Sinvicta PR?
Is Sinvicta
spitting this?
No.
Is he a hybrid? Are we dealing with the gray human hybrid?
No,
oh my God,
no, surely not. You both have seen me. You all three of you actually seen me in real life.
I've seen what you've presented as your physical form.
And what's weird is you only showed it in my life like 10 or so years ago. So what were you doing before that?
He's not even on camera right now.
Whoa, bro.
Wait, you guys can't see me? I've got my camera on. You guys can't see me?
No, we can't see you at all.
I thought I was on the entire time. So
no.
my battery must have gone out, I guess. Oh, man, sorry.
Weird.
I mean, you've seen... You all have seen both sets of my eyelids, so I mean, you
can find out all of this and more at my new website, QAnon, but not that QAnon. It's johndelancey.com.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And
very fun stuff.
You know, if the listeners, if you all want to do a follow up and have me back, I'd love to come back and keep on vibing, man.
Hell yes.
Yeah, man. We'd love
We'll have to find another mystery set in Bermuda.
There's a lot of them.
We'll let Alex do we'll bring you on for an Alex internet mystery and you can go crazy trying to figure out what the fuck the point of the story is and then be left on red and never find out.
You'll find out.
There's plenty of them. I mean, you know, you've got even the original name of Bermuda was the Devil's Islands. So, yeah. Well,
I mean, you're just showing evidence why it is haunted. You know what I mean? Or it is dangerous and aliens are there.
No,
and
it's literally heaven on earth. It is the most beautiful place that you ever go.
Looks like
it does look like
a beautiful Lego town. I can't believe it.
It is gorgeous, and I wish I could. One day I'll be able to go back home and visit again.
Yeah, one day when everything gets kind of back to normal. We're off to do a mini-sode with good old Sinvicta. So if you want more Sinvicta, it'll be with us in the mini-sode over at patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod at the $15 tier, where you can get the mini-sodes immediately after release. Last thing I want to say before we play the best outro music of any podcast. If you guys are free on May 26th and live close enough or want to make a road trip or even live in Austin, Texas, we are doing Chilluminati Live at the Parish Theater. Tickets are on sale right now. They're over half sold out. If you want VIP tickets, there's only a few of those left. So go grab those because I have a feeling we're going to sell out well before the show even happens.
I will
So go
drink
grab
a
your
beer
tickets.
near you. Confirmed.
Yes, it'll happen. I will sensually call you all Chilluminauts in person.
I will shake my head disapprovingly.
Mathis
great.
gets up and moves around more than you would expect during the live show.
Is that a bad thing? Like, is it just weird?
more?
Is it weird
it's just
how much I
more than
move?
you would expect. That's all I'm
Can
saying.
I go just sit in the audience during the live show? Could I just like go take my microphone and
work
just
for
sit in the
your-
audience?
not
and
You
work
just
gotta
be
find
like,
another like
these weirdos.
you gotta find
over
another
here.
guy
Can
to
I do,
sit
like,
with
a
you
whole
to
bit?
like do like a
I'll sit with
guys from the
Jesse.
Muppets. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we'll be like, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, get a
can't
load
we
of this
think of their
shifty
names?
guy. Look at this guy with the long hair over here.
The only aliens are the ones up on the stage.
Holmes and Watson.
The end
More
of
like
the show-
Dietz and Watson.
Hey,
I'm aiming to end the show.
We came back to
First
it.
of all, I can't believe you brought that joke back.
Rule 3
Second of all,
got me. It got me.
If I can end the show like we ended our LA live show, where like we ended it on me saying something so insane, Jesse literally walked off the stage and couldn't even take me seriously, which
I
made
went and
me
got a
feel
drink.
accomplished.
I went
You
and got
did.
a
You
drink in
walked
the
away from me. I thought I made a very good point, and you, on the other hand, walked away. So if you want to see that kind of shit, it's a good time. We'll have a really good time, and if you get VIP passes, you get a 30-minute pre-show. You get a bunch of free swag that you're going to be given. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're off to go do the mini-sode. Thank you all so much for watching. We appreciate you. Goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.
see ya.
Anyway, me and my wife were sitting outside indulging on our porch one night, enjoying ourselves. I needed to go to the bathroom, so I stepped back inside, and after a few moments, I hear my wife go, "Holy shit, get out here." So I quickly dash back outside, and she's looking up at the sky in awe. I look up too, and there's a perfect line of dozen lights traveling across the sky.